a lot of people who listen to this, I think what I've heard them say is, they want to build a rental portfolio. And obviously, as the name implies there, but they say, I've got enough maybe savings for one down payment. So how am I gonna grow beyond that? It doesn't seem feasible to them to continue to grow. So can you talk about like the financing options that are available today and kind of what you do at Trophy Point?
Yeah, so to use your analogy or example, you may have somebody that saves up, let's say $25,000, $50,000, and that's good enough for a down payment. Especially for the rental properties that I would espouse trying to get into. I would not recommend buying like a $400,000 house to turn that into a rental. I think houses 250 and below are very doable as rental properties, and that's also market dependent, but I think you get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have that option. Many lenders lend up to 90% of the purchase price for a rental portfolio. And that's great. And if you just want to get one or two rental properties under your portfolio, then that's fantastic. Use your savings for that because you'll get the best rates. Probably if you could put 20% down, that's even better. You'll make your lender very happy. But for those of us that want to add 5, 10, 15 units to our portfolios, and there's some really good reasons for that. Literally, you could live off your rentals, as your podcast actually is so aptly titled. For those folks, your available or saved cash can only take you so far. And so then you have to start being creative with the financing. And there's a couple of different ways you can hack it. Like one, you could always try to get seller financing if you can, right? Where you don't have to put that much money down and your seller's in essence funding basically or financing your acquisition. And that's probably the best way. And I would always say start there if you can, but 9 times out of 10, most sellers probably won't go for that. They want to get their cash up front and they want to walk away. So then you've got the banks and then you've got private lenders. And the banks typically, I would say they don't like to lend. It's really weird to say because banks, the way they're structured after 2009, 2010, with some of the laws in place, the way they lend doesn't exactly like, quote unquote, no pun intended, lend itself to good rental portfolio operators because they want money down with every single deal. The underwriting process can be very arduous. And so you may even lose deals because the bank has such documentation requirements and your seller may want to close in 10 days. And honestly, if you're trying to like acquire a lot of properties, through experience, or you will find out through experience that sellers want a quick close. They don't like financing contingencies. They don't like, waiting 30 days, even 45 days for things like that. And if you can be the guy that says, or the person that says, hey, I'll close all cash in 10 days or 15 days and less. I don't even need an appraisal contingency. No financing contingency. You're more likely to win that offer. You may even be less in terms of your bid by a couple $1,000, but I think most sellers will go for your bet because there's less things that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, that leads itself to private lenders like us, where, most private lenders want 10% down still. But for the military affiliated crowd, I'll lend up to 100% LTV or 100% LTC as long as there's some built-in equity into the property upon the buy.
Yeah. So how do you determine that?
So, that's the art. There's a science to it, which everybody knows, which is comparables. But then the art is being able to like negotiate deals where you're buying below market. And there's many ways you can do that. But PropStream, for example, is a great tool where you can see the available comparables of properties in that neighborhood that sold within the last 6 months. That's what we use also partially in our analysis is like, what's the comp? So if the houses in the neighborhood sell for 200 and you're picking it up because of your skill in negotiation and the strength of your offer for 165, for example, I'll lend you the 165 100%, on that. You just got to make sure that you're getting a good deal. And typically you want to find off-market deals in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So if somebody's doing the BRRRR model and they bring the deal to you, So you're doing your own underwrite. You're not sending an appraiser out to the property to do an appraisal. You're basically pulling your own comps. And if it, and say they say, yeah, I think, I'm putting an offer at 165. I think it's worth 200 today. It'll be worth 300 when I'm done. I'm going to put $50,000 into it. You verify that yourself.
Yeah, we listen very closely. I think the benefit of working with a private lender, especially one that has owned properties, is that we're pretty flexible. Like I think, and a good private lender, it's not just about me, but a good private lender should have experience in real estate, one, but two, they should be very, very like available in terms of listening to your plan in particular. Whereas banks kind of have like a cookie cutter approach and they just want to, the lending officer probably never even owned real estate to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't maybe not be able to see what you're trying to accomplish in terms of value creation. But if you find a private lender that has owned real estate, knows what real estate is, and is willing to listen, and they should listen, then you're going to get a lot further along in getting a deal done.
Yeah.
And so we don't order appraisals. We order like a modified one because I need to for investor purposes, like a third party sort of like broker price opinion, if you want to call it that. But if I have to order appraisal, then that's going to mean time and cost, like a lot of cost. Like it could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks before you get your appraisal done potentially. If you thought the appraisal was going to cost $600, it may end up costing $1,200 because of supply and demand. And there's not that many appraisers out there, depending on the market, of course. And it may have come down a little bit, especially in today's market as we talk. But generally, like appraisals can really screw up the process. Whereas you just want to deal with somebody that agrees with your plan or can see the merits of your plan, and empower you to go forward that way. I don't need to rely on an appraisal. As a good lender, I don't need to rely on an appraisal to look at a property when I can just use my own experience to kind of verify what we already know.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Especially when it's in that, unrehabbed condition. It's really tough for traditional appraisers to come in and slap a value on that. Yeah, that makes sense. So in terms of turnaround time, then, like you mentioned, a lot of investors, they have a short turnaround time between the time they get it under contract and the time they need to close. So how long do you typically need to get a deal done?
So I'll say this, the shortest we've done a deal is 12 hours, where somebody's lender pulled out at the last minute and they had title done and the paperwork was done. We really just had to change names a little bit, Control F replace and change some things around, but we got the deal done in 12 hours. Typically we can close a deal within 10 days or less. It's really like title is the only general problem that we encounter. And that's kind of out of my control, but as long as title search is done and the documents don't take that long. We have lawyers that work pretty fast on our side that can do docs the same day, generally speaking. We can fund within 5 to 10 days. And I think that's, private lenders, you do pay more for sure in terms of interest cost and points and all that. But then they should be able to make it up in terms of speed and then the easiness to close. And that's where we specialize in, is speed and the ease of closing.